Hi, this is Lynn, your adulting coach. I help autistic young adults and their families systemize adulting together. Today's struggle is from a mom at the parents of young adults 13 plus with autism. Our mom has a 13-year-old daughter. Her thought is, I want to run for the hills. She explains that she has to get this out before she explodes. Her 13-year-old is impossible. She refuses to do her homework. How many of us have felt like this? It's just impossible. When she does do her homework, she works on something simple that's not due in weeks. And instead of letting her help on the assignments that are either past due or more difficult, she says she's struggling in math, but severe anxiety won't let her ask for help, so she's failing. So the mom got her into a learned math tutoring program for homework help. But then she lies to the teachers about what's done and what isn't done. In fact, our mom explains that she thinks she lies constantly. We never know when she's telling the truth. She also wears the same 5 shirts and jeans. She picked holes in the shirts and won't wear anything new. This is the thought, or that what the daughter said. The kids at school may not like them. I'll wear them on the weekends, but not to school. That's how she explains to her mom how she'd rather wear the clothes with holes in them than the ones without. She refuses ADHD stimulant medication, so she's on a non-stimulant that does nothing but help her sleep. And she mentions later in the post that it's Risperdal. She refuses anxiety medicine. She refuses to do the smallest things that could help. It has become infuriating. She's seeing a new therapist this Saturday, and our mom really hopes that this woman can help her. And we do too. And we understand. We have been there. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us because so many of us can identify with them. This is going to be, as I'm trying to be as helpful as I can in explaining an approach that just might help our mom. And I'm always going to start with Barb Avilad's approach of trying to understand what's going on with our autistic young adult and with ourselves, maybe, and then connecting with both them and us, and then practicing, figuring out what practices might help. So let's start with understanding what might be going on. It seems like our autistic young adult, the 13-year-old daughter, is caught up in the motivation triangle. This is where we seek pleasure in the form of instant gratification, we avoid pain, and we conserve energy. That's what our limbic system, the amygdala in particular, does as part of our brain to keep us alive. It evolved when we were living in caves and in tribes, and it did a pretty good job keeping us alive, or our species would not have populated the planet quite as much as it did. So those default thoughts that she gets that are suggested by her brain are generated by that limbic system that is keeping us seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, and conserving energy. Makes perfect sense that both the mom and the daughter might be kind of like, this is too much. I'm going to conserve my energy. I'm going to avoid my pain. And I'm going to go find something that's a heck of a lot more pleasant than dealing with these lagging skills and unsolved problems. However, and if you're hearing a little whiny in the background, it's because my my Yorkshire Terrier is with me today because my daughter is working, and somebody always has to be with her because she's highly anxious. So the truth is, though, that most of the threats that we perceive today, most of the things that are threatening to us, are not as much physical as they used to be in cave, the days when we were living in caves. They're much more mental. And I think it's really helpful for us to recognize that that's what our brain is trying to do, is trying to protect us physically. But the real threats that we have today are more mental, more psychological. And in fact, that what we need to do is use our prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain that helps us solve problems, to deny that false pleasure and actually delay gratification to figure this out. We don't need to run away, and invite the discomfort, like actually be willing to feel how it feels in our body to be so uncomfortable and to take some risks. Now, that's what we would encourage our autistic young adult to do, is to, take some risk and some actions that may not feel right at the time. And then actually expend a lot of energy instead of trying to guard our energy. We want to actually take massive action, lots of experiments to see if we can figure out what it is that works for us. So that's, I think, just a reframe of what's going on in the situation. We certainly understand that she has, that the daughter has a limbic system that's easily aroused. And so she is, because she has an autism diagnosis, we can in most cases infer that. So what's happening is her brain is giving her a lot of thoughts that are alarming. So now what we want to do is we want to connect with ourselves and then with others. And I'm just so glad that our mom was willing to write all these thoughts down. In fact, she even suggested that just by writing them down, she found some relief. And that's because that enables us to get a distance from our thoughts and us. So that, okay, these are the thoughts that have been offered by my brain, but my wise observer, the the smart part of our brain, the part that can watch our thoughts go by like clouds in the sky, our wise observer is going, isn't that interesting? And that's what writing our thoughts down does for us. And then we want to take the time to pause and suggest that separating out the facts versus the thoughts could be helpful in this situation. Byron Katie is one of my favorite teachers, as she explains that that's what we need to do, is separate our thoughts from the facts, because it's our story that makes us suffer. And she'll tell you a lot about that in her book, and you can find her all over the internet, in particular on YouTube and on Facebook, where she actually coaches people 3 times a week for free. So I think she's just a lovely woman who has done just a great deal of good in the world. And she says that we need to keep in mind that I could be wrong, that this is just a story. She argues that we sit, we stand, we lie horizontal, and the rest is story. So it's, it's a human thing that we tell our story in order to figure out what's going on for us. And that maybe some of what's our mom's thoughts are not, what we want to do is we want to separate out the facts versus the story. What are the facts, and how can we get to those facts and help make them better? Because we have a tendency to want to control what our children do, especially when they're school aged, because we know what the requirements are that they have to meet in order to graduate. And the fact that they're not doing what they need to do, we want to really control that, because we think if they would just do that, then we would feel better. Interesting that really that's the motivation, is that we just want them to fit into our prescribed should statements, that she should do her homework, she should wear clothing that's more presentable, she should ask for help, and we're into those shoulds. And the bottom line is that instead we might want to consider just observing what's going on, because the way she describes it, there's quite a bit going on that's worth looking at and worth observing. And in some ways, we actually feel entitled to a better situation, a better set of facts. Just, we do kind of go through this mourning period when we learn that our children have different brains, have autistic brains, and we just want the whole challenge to go away, even though we know that that's not possible. that, we love them all the way down to their toenails, and that if we really stopped, we would consider how amazing they already are and how beautiful their brains really are. That maybe, maybe there's some room in there for us to sort of accept what's happening, ban the shoulds. And we have these prescribed list of shoulds that our loved ones should follow. And when they don't, we feel like they have let us down. And I see that in my own life. I've seen that, in my household often. And it's just good to notice that those are the types of thoughts that are going on. And then maybe it would be better if we could ban the shoulds in life. And then let's also connect with this child, because as Stuart Shanker says in his book Self-Reg, which is highly recommended, between Barb Avila and Stuart Shanker, you cannot go wrong. When a child is in distress, we feel an almost reflexive need to try and reason it away. We're using our logic. The problem is that the systems in the brain that she would need to process well-intentioned reasoning go offline when she's hyper aroused, when she's in that fight, flight, or flee, freeze state that her brain puts her in when it senses critical danger, when it's that amygdala puts her in. She truly doesn't register what you're saying. She truly doesn't. It's just not going in. And that's really important, because it's so frustrating for us when our kids don't know. We do know what could be better for them. We do think we know what could be better for them. And they're just rejecting it. So it almost feels like a rejection of us as their parents. And that's really important to notice. And that these behaviors are expressions of her inability in the moment to respond to everything going on in and around her. The sounds, the noises, the discomforts, the distractions, the emotions. But we react as if there were problems with a child's character. She's lazy, or she's stubborn, or she won't change. Worse yet, our children come to believe it. And I think Stuart nails this. He's really right on. And he suggests a number of things in that book, Self-Reg, that I just find very helpful. But to me, it all boils down to this steer map. We need to really look at the situation. That's just the facts. And then what thought we have about it. And then the emotion that's being created by that thought. And then what action we're taking, and the result. And our result always ties back to our thoughts. So if we take the time to separate out what's happening, so much of it feels like it's just spinning and spinning. And it's like in that spin cycle in the washing machine, where we just can't distinguish between one, piece of clothing and the other. And it's just a blur. That if we can just slow things down and take the time to realize what's happening, and that we can sort things out and find better solutions. So the proactive partnering part that I recommend is, again, Stuart comes back with, there isn't a single child who, with understanding and patience, can't be guided along a trajectory that leads to a rich and meaningful life. But stereotypes of the difficult child color our views, as do our own hopes, dreams, frustrations, and fears as parents. He's seen this. We've all felt it. We all have been part of it. And I just encourage all of us to recognize that every one of our children can be led, guided down a trajectory that leads to a rich and satisfying and meaningful life. And Barb Avila advises us to get low, get quiet, and get predictable to help our autistic young adults the most. So she also uses this quote in her book, and I think it really helps us remind ourselves that to begin with the end in mind means to start with a clear understanding of our destination. It means to know where we're going so that we better understand where we are now, and so that the steps we take are always in the right direction. Thank you, Stephen Covey. This is from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So I just want to remind us that what we're trying to do here is raise our kids so that they practice adulting. And it's practicing the set of mental tools that help us manage our thoughts, emotions, and actions, back to the SEER map, so that we can achieve goals set by us for us. So that's the end in mind. What we want to do is help our autistic young adults become the adults that they're capable of becoming. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of practice. But as long as we keep the end in mind and we have a plan, we can do it. I know we can do it. So I'm going to lean heavily also on Dr. Ross Green, who advocates the collaborative, proactive problem solving process, where we keep a list of what the problems are and we try to solve it using the what's the situation, just the facts. We ask them to share their STEER map first. That's the empathy step. We share our STEER map, which we have prepared in advance, and it's succinct and has few words so that they can grasp what it is that our concerns are. And then we decide on what we can do to experiment with what might work. The whole process just is golden. And if we solve 1, 2, 3 problems together this way, so many of the other ones will also be solved. Because what we have to remember is these 5 things we cannot change. This is from David Rico's book, that everything changes and ends. This is not going to be the way things are always going to be. And in some cases, that's a relief. Things do not always go according to plan. That's for sure. Life is not always fair. We understand that one as parents of autistic young adults. Pain is part of life. We know this, we just don't want to accept it sometimes. And then people are not always loving and loyal all the time. That there's other things that are going on that are motivating them to behave less than what we would hope they would behave like. And as long as we can accept these things as things that we cannot always change, then we can come up with solutions that will help us move from, okay, that's all right, I get what's going on, to, oh, that's good, we're going to learn something together here, to autism is a gift. It has helped us all become a better version of ourselves. So please join me in the Art of Adulting, where we take this whole process and we divide it up into these 4 parts, where we clarify who we are at our best, both the autistic young adult and the parent, and so that we can find peace in the progress that we're making incrementally, where we look at our thinking and become much more aware of what our thoughts are creating and how we can better steer our minds to the things that are going to solve our problems better for us. We're going to create better results. And then, okay, what are the set of actions in each of our 10 domains? If we slow down, divide life into the 10 domains and agree on what it is that we're looking for in each of those 10 domains, that gives us the end in mind. Back to Stephen Covey. It's just so good to write down what do we expect for ourselves in each of the 10 domains, and then have our autistic young adults start to put together what they expect of themselves. There's actually a lot less anxiety when we're acting consistent with who we want to be. And then the people side is where we listen first to understand, then proactively partner to be understood and solve problems together. And that's a riff on another Stephen Covey's believes strongly that our first objective is to understand, and then we can work together to be understood overall. And this is what we work on in the Art of Adulting, because even though your daughter's going to, someday grow up and leave the house, those are always going to be concerns. So we want to arm our children with the very best roadmap that we can possibly think of that's going to help them become they're just the best version of who they are. So please visit me at lindsay.davison.com if you want a transcript. And links to the resources. You can tell it's spring in my part of the world. I'm getting the allergies again. Resources that I'm mentioning in this video, and a link to, please come to my blog. So it's just lindsaydavidson.com/blog. And I'm happy to share all that I can with you, and hope that you'll join me in the art of adulting. Thank you for watching this video. Bye for now.